Well, it's a high-stakes day at the White House, and the clock is quickly running out with less than 48 hours now to avoid a government shutdown. Both Republicans and Democrats are digging in, and neither side looks ready to back down. For more, let's bring in our panel, CBN News Chief Political Analyst David Brody and Nathan Gonzales, editor and publisher of Inside Elections and a Faith Nation contributor. Gentlemen, welcome. So I do want to talk about the budget battle, of course, but first, David, your reaction to what we saw at the White House today and President Trump laying out his vision for peace in the Middle East.
Sure. Well, potentially significant, Jenna. A lot of Arab nation buy-in, which makes this different and crucial. Of course, ultimately, we wait to see what Hamas ends up doing. I did notice in the proposal that it said that if Hamas surrenders, or at least agrees to this ceasefire or end of the war, if you will, that they would be granted safe haven to other countries, basically a trip out of Gaza to wherever they like, the country of their choice. That's interesting. A lot of devil in the details, if you will, so we'll monitor it.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the budget battle. The deadline to reach a deal for lawmakers is Wednesday. Nathan, can these lawmakers come to an agreement?
Well, we'll see ultimately what happens with this White House meeting. As of this conversation that we're having, we don't know the results of that. But I think President Trump, he wants to be a deal maker. But in this case, I'm skeptical that we'll see something today. I think we're headed for a shutdown because both parties see it in their interest. I think Democrats, first of all, they're not really ready to compromise with the Republicans on anything, and they believe that Republicans who are in control will be held responsible, whereas Republicans feel like Democrats are going to be held responsible for the shutdown. And the administration, I think, is looking to do some things, potentially lay off more people, to use this as justification to further reduce the size of government. So both sides, I think, are interested in having a shutdown. That makes it hard to not have one.
Yeah, Nathan, in other news, the state of Oregon is suing the Trump administration for deploying the National Guard to Portland. What do you think the Trump administration, what do you think their calculation is here? And is this a political winner of an issue for this White House?
I think the White House, plays into the crime, cracking down on crime. Even more specifically, they're going after Antifa. The challenge with that is that Antifa is not a specific organization. It's much more loose and more of an ideology than a specific structure. And I think this is an example of the administration pushing the reach of the executive branch, right? When President Trump deployed the National Guard in D.C., it's like, okay, that was a federal district in a little bit of a unique circumstance. Now we're talking about going to Oregon, one of the 50 states, and now using the National Guard and the military for crime, crime reduction against U.S. citizens. And so I think this is more of a reach. Is it politically beneficial? We'll have to see. So far, in general, the president's job approval rating is lower than his disapproval rating, and we'll see what the impact this has.
Yeah. David, do you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think ultimately this is all about challenging it in the courts. What I mean by that specifically is Oregon is challenging it, but the White House wants to have this fight to see how far they can go with, not to get into the weeds, but the Posse Comitatus Act. And ultimately the question is, will President Trump at some point invoke the Insurrection Act from the late 1700s to give him even potentially more power? There hasn't been a Supreme Court decision on how far a president can go under that act. So I think all of this is going to be sorted out in the courts. Having said that, makes perfect sense as to why President Trump wants to do this. And this idea that Antifa is an ideology, sure, it can be both. It can be an ideology and actual groups, loose groups, but they're there and they've got an Antifa mindset, but they're also local groups on the ground that definitely employ, so to speak, I say so to speak, Antifa members.
Okay, guys, we have to leave it there. There's a lot to talk about. We'll have you on again soon. Thank you so much.